a salute to our flag. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to start off this meeting by acknowledging the land we are on, acknowledging that the land we are gathered today is unceded territory of the Wiyot people who continue to live and thrive on this land today. It's surrounded by the traditional, ancestral, and present homeland of several indigenous nations, including the Hupa, Karuk, Matole, Tolowa, Wailaki, and Yurok that make up Humboldt County. And at this time, we welcome any general public comments. Thank you. Hearing none, let's move to 1.3 member comments. Do any of our members have any comments today?
I do.
Trustee Dorn?
I did the series on ACJC that President Flamer had in his update in the last month, and I found it really quick, interesting. They really get to the point in a hurry, and I found that there was two different things. They used the word integrity, and then they also were very constantly offering, throughout it. And, please call. And I did make a recommendation to President Flamer and President Kelly that one of the classes was your role in accreditation. And it was more campus wide, but I think to have our VP from ACJC do a conference with us on exactly what that means. I'm worried that we're losing touch with accreditation with so many other issues.
Thank you, Trustee Dorn. Yeah, and I do believe that Dr. Flamer has extended invitation for presentation by the ACCJC at our next board workshop. Looking forward to that. Any other trustees have any member comments?
President Kelly, I have.
Hi, Trustee Began. Yes, please.
A comment. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Yesterday and today, I participated on a couple of Zoom meetings related to the DEI task force. Yesterday's meeting was the task force group 2, which is working on developing guidance for mission statements, EEO plans, and they discussed the Celebrate Diversity component of the Chancellor's Office charge to us. And I learned that the Chancellor's Office has established April has the Cultural Awareness Week. That districts should choose a week in April to recognize their multicultural diversity activities. And I wanted to share that with the group. And I also learned that some of the other professional groups like the Student Senate and the Academic Senate and ACRO and the business officers, they all also are charged with acknowledging and celebrating diversity during the month of April. So I wanted to share that. And then this morning when I was on the steering committee Zoom meeting, we had an interesting report from the Task Force Group 4, which Trustee Mullery was participating on earlier this year. And they talked about their task is to look at faculty hiring. And they talked about some of the challenges for trustees in that area because it's often considered more operational than policy oriented. And so it's hard for trustees to know a lot about the current practices. But they thought we needed to work on being more knowledgeable about our local local practices, particularly related to diversity, and also learning about exit interviews and getting feedback about exit interviews from employees who leave the district to see if there's any issues that relate to diversity and equity that should become addressed by policies in our district. So I just wanted to share that update.
Thank you, Trustee Biggin. Any other member comments? I'd like to announce I finally received my certificate for effective trusteeship. Woo-hoo. Gonna get it framed. It'll be in the background. Yeah, really encourage all my colleagues to get through that program if you haven't, or to renew if you have. Great, love that program. All right, hearing no further comments, let's move on to 1.4. Do we have any board committee reports today? I don't think we do. All right. 1.5, appoint audit committee members. So this has been a fun experience. I thank you all for talking to me and letting me know your comfort levels on some of these appointments. The first committee, the audit committee members I'd like to appoint are Trustee Matthews, Trustee Dorn, and Trustee Capini to the audit committee. Thank you all for being willing to participate in that very important committee for us. Is there any comments or questions or discussion for that? All right. 1.6, ad hoc President Superintendent Evaluation Committee. I'd like to appoint Trustee Mullery, Trustee Matthews, and Trustee Capini to that committee. Any comments or questions about that appointment? Right, hearing none. 1.7, Board Self-Evaluation Committee. I would like to appoint Trustee Dorn, myself, and Trustee Matthews to this committee. .8, Committee on Advocacy. I'd like to appoint Trustee Biggin, Trustee Robertson, Trustee Dorn, and I'd like to encourage that committee to make recommendations to the Student Senate, if you wouldn't mind, as part of the approval process for this. Of course, we'll bring the recommendations to the board first, but I would like to get the Student Senate's input on these points of advocacy in the future, if the committee would consider that. Let's see. Any comments or questions there? All right. 1.9, Committee on Student Success. I'd like Trustee Mullery, Trustee Robertson, myself, and Student Trustee Peters to be a part of this committee. And thank you, Trustee Peters, on top of a full workload and study schedule, academic senate, and all your other responsibilities. Thank you for being willing to serve on this committee as well. Let's see, 1.10, board representatives to the foundation board. I'd like to ask assistance from Trustee Robertson and Trustee Capini. And last but not least, appointing a trustee to the REDEC board. Item 1.11, appointing Trustee Kelly, myself, unless anyone is really interested. I don't see anybody waving their hands, or where is everybody? Why? Okay, fine. I look forward to that. I'm enjoying that role. So thank you very much. All right. So let's see, no further comments or questions on these appointments. Let's move on to item 1.12, approving trustee participation in the Community College League of California Effective Trustee Program in the CCLC Annual Conference. Dr. Flamer, anything to comment here?
No, it's just that we value the work that the trustees do, and I think that the more training that a current trustee or a new trustee has, it just makes us a stronger institution. So this is put forward for your approval, and if there any other trustees that would like to participate in the January CCLC training, that would just be helpful.
I so move.
Thank you, trustee Dorn. Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you, trustee Matthews. All right, any further discussion?
I
Questions?
just want to make a comment about that our policy is the president attends the presidential workshop. And also, I would suggest the 2 new trustees attend this for sure.
Yes, thank you. It's already on my calendar. And I know I was talking to trustee Copini about attending, so I think it's on his radar as well. All right, hearing no further comments or questions, Cynthia, would you mind doing a roll call for us?
Carol Matthews,
Yes.
Richard Dorn,
Yes,
Colleen Mullery,
Yes.
Sally Biggin,
Yes,
Tracy Copini,
Yes.
Rebecca Robertson,
Yes.
Danny Kelly.
Yes. Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Item 1.3, approve President of the Board Danny Kelly's participation in the 2021 Virtual Community College National Legislative Summit.
I move approval.
Thank
I
you.
second.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion? All right, Cynthia, would you do the honors?
Carol Matthews,
Yes.
Richard Dorn,
Yes,
Colleen Mullery,
Yes.
Sally Biggin,
yes,
Tracy Copini,
Yes.
Rebecca Robertson,
Yes.
Danny Kelly.
Yes. All right, thank you, everyone. Move us to item 1.14, status of the Board of Trustees requests. Dr. Flamer?
This is just for information, if the board has any comments or questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions at this time? I did have one. I just wanted to iterate how important it is for me that we do find somebody to take on the CR history project. I've been thinking a lot about it as I've been thinking about a trustee center of excellence and what a valuable resource it would be. I know that when I ran for my position on this board, I had very little history of Humboldt County. And I think that the more history we can have of the college, the better our decision-making can be as trustees. So really looking forward to us finding someone. I know everybody's workloads are heavy and we want to continually put student success first. But if we can find someone to tackle this project, even if I can volunteer some time to help do some research, I would really welcome finding somebody to lead that.
would it be appropriate sabbatical? Would it be an appropriate sabbatical request at some point?
Well, of course, may I respond? I'm
Please,
sorry.
yeah, thank you, sorry.
Really, it's up to the faculty to put their proposal through. You know, we could always just simply say that this is a project that would like done, but it's not our call.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further discussion on these items? Excellent. That brings us to our consent calendar action items. Is there any items that a trustee would like to pull from the consent?
I did 2.2.
Okay, trustee Dorn, 2.2. Anybody else? All right. Entertain a motion to approve 2.2 or 2.1, 2.3, and 2.4.
I so move.
I second it.
All right, got a first and a second. Let's see, Cynthia?
Carol Matthews,
Yes.
Richard Dorn,
Yes,
Colleen Mullery,
Yes.
Sally Biggin,
Yes,
Tracy Copini,
Yes.
Rebecca Robertson,
Yes.
Danny Kelly.
Yes. All right, 2.2, trustee Matthews, or trustee Dorn? Did you have any
Yeah, I was just curious. There were 3 replacements in the child care center. And I was curious, that seemed like 3 is there a cause for that, or what was the behind the scenes deal?
ECE, the ECE assistants are positions that are very difficult for us to keep. And so this is a normal cycle. We seem to always be getting resignations and recruiting for them.
Okay, I just thought 3 at once was sort of unusual. Okay, I move for approval.
I'll second.
second,
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All right.
Carol
Cynthia?
Matthews,
aye,
Richard Dorn,
Yes.
Colleen Mullery,
Yes.
Sally Biggin,
Yes.
Tracy Copini,
Yes.
Rebecca Robertson,
Yes.
Danny Kelly.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. And that brings us to 3.1, the financial report. President Flamer?
The only thing that I could add is the fact that we're still waiting for information from our auditor controllers for Humboldt County. So the numbers aren't in yet. And if you follow what's going on in the newspapers, I'm not sure when we're going to have an end in sight. But we have let their chancellor's office know what our situation is. So Julia, Vice President Morrison, is keeping them up to date almost on a weekly basis.
Thank you. Can we have a motion to approve?
I move approval,
I second it.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I had 2 questions.
Trustee Dorn?
So President Flamer, some of us that don't get newspapers, could you give us a brief or a very brief update on the controller situation?
I will talk about what's out there about what we know is that there's a difference of opinion between the Board of Supervisors and the controller on money that has been paid out plus the timing. So if you have been reading that both sides are, if you will, lowering up or getting attorneys to represent them in the court. And so now we'll just see what the attorneys in the court determines as next steps.
So they're just holding all payments to everybody?
No,
Oh.
she's continuing to work at it. It's just she's doing the best she can to follow the right rule. And so there's an opinion whether the rules are followed accurately. But the controller's office is trying their best to satisfy what their mission is.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm still waiting for my refund from August, so that was a 2-sided question.
Okay, I got you.
They owe me a lot of money. And then just my final question is, so far we're positive cash flow.
So far, yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're $1.2 million to the good besides the treasury, including the treasury funds. So right now you're not sure where we are with the trans.
Where we are with the trans, or where we are with the deferrals.
Well, what I think, don't you have declare the trans money next month, what we're going to borrow or
We do.
participate?
So we're really hoping to get some more clarity from the state and the chancellor's office on what the deferrals are going to look like, if they're going to be maintained or they're going to be reduced. We just don't know that. It's still uncertain about that piece.
Right, and the controller that issue will affect the property tax revenue as
Yes.
well? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Flamer. Trustee Dorn, any other comments or questions at this time regarding this issue? All right, hearing none. Let's move on to an update on the education master plan.
We need to vote.
Oh, that's right. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did. Thank you. Let's see. Cynthia?
Carol Matthews,
yes,
Richard Dorn,
Yes.
Colleen Mullery,
Yes.
Sally Biggin,
Yes.
Tracy Copini,
Yes.
Rebecca Robertson,
Yes.
Danny Kelly.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everybody. Item 4.1, Education Master Plan Revision. Dr. Flamer?
Thank you. Is Professor Gaines on the line?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Terrific. Trustees, just if you remember, we had Chris Gaines do a brief presentation, I think in the August or September board meeting on where we are on the revision of the Education Master Plan. Our small group has been meeting almost on a weekly basis prior to the end of the fall term to fine tune our collective thoughts about the Education Master Plan, both in where we are and where we should go. And I thought that it was really important to give the trustees, especially our new trustees, an update about where we are in the process and how much work has been done by Professor Gaines and his colleagues on this important project. Okay. Chris, I think you have access.
Yeah, I've shared my screen. Can everyone see the slide on your screen
Yeah.
titled Education Master Plan Revision?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, thank you to the board and thank you, Dr. Flamer. I'm really excited to present this today, and especially to those of you that were in the September board update. I hope that this will show progress to you, as Dr. Flamer has mentioned. But for the new board members, I am going to start this presentation with a background, a very brief background of what we talked about in September to make sure that we're all on the same page. And then I'll move into an update on what we've done in the fall semester and give you, of course, a view on where we're going from here. So as a background, we had some working hypotheses that our EMT group developed over summer. And these hypotheses were looking at trends that, frankly, as we discussed in September, that we view as in place prior to COVID and accelerated by COVID. In other words, these are not COVID crises or challenges or things that we are facing. These were accelerated that were already well underway prior to our current crisis. And so please forgive me today. I'm going to read some of these slides a little bit more than I like, because some of these slides have language that I think is important to be read so that you can consider them. But I'll try to go through this one fairly quickly. This one really says that the digital disruption of virtually all industries, including education, will give students more choice. And that choice will be not locked to geography and will allow students to access higher education in a myriad fashion. And we'll talk in more detail about that in a moment. But to further complicate things, we also were looking at employers and society endorsing these changes, meaning that they would view these new credentials as substitutes to our current certificate and degree programs. And this may be actually a little bit more related to COVID. Budget crises and lower regulatory standards, which are currently well underway, would further challenge higher education's ability to compete, but also would lower the barriers to entry for new competition to enter the marketplace. So those were our working hypotheses that we have already talked about. Just kind of going way back to 1995, we looked at the model prior to digital disruption. This is before the taking off of online education. 1995, gosh, it was even right in the beginning of the internet itself. So College of the Redwoods in that environment was, as we keep talking about internally, an if we build it, they will come model. And the idea is that our students were geographically bound. We were the only community college in town. They did not have the ability to unlock their higher education digitally. So they had one choice, and that was CR. We also offered some great stuff. We had a whole bunch of offerings. We offered financial aid, student services, athletics, et cetera, a whole bunch of services. We were accredited, and the outcome was endorsed, meaning that society and employers said, hey, great, you get that degree and certificate, and we will pay you more or get you more access to this particular job, et cetera, et cetera. And so the system was really working to CR's advantage in this environment. Now, where are we now is really in this question of if we build it, will they come? Now, which scenario seems more likely? The 1995 scenario where the student has one option here at the top to access greater opportunities, or that they will have many options. Now, please don't get hung up on the exact apps that we've copied here. This is just really an illustration to demonstrate that when we digitally unlock education from geography, we allow students to access education everywhere, anytime, all the time. Now, there is one thing we are going to talk about that's happening now, which is the California Virtual Campus, but I'll get to that in a little bit down the road here. To further complicate this challenge, we looked at the degree at which, well, let me back up. We tried to look at the most likely courses that would be subject to competition in this environment, i.e., courses that could be easily unlocked, digitally distributed in this anytime, anywhere environment. And we estimate that 70 to 80% of our FTES fall into the upper right quadrant here, which is easily standardized and easily digitally delivered. Now, this number, of course, we're still working through, but obviously that is a significant portion of our revenue that falls into this category of highly competitive. Now, we've talked in September, and for new board members, very important to understand that we're talking about within our system, not just some fancy new app from Google or whatnot, but we're talking about within our system. The California Virtual Campus is allowing, for example, you could have an Economics 1 class, which in 1995 was offered at CR, and as we've argued, we had kind of a monopolistic position on local students for that class. In the California Virtual Campus, you could imagine 113 offerings of that same Econ 1 class that is digitally distributed through our own system to our local students. It's not there yet, but that could easily be reasonable in the future. So we, of course, started to look at what would the opposite of the highly competitive, standardized, easily digitally delivered offerings, and the opposite of that would, of course, be the lower left quadrant. Not easily standardized, not easily digitally delivered. And so we've been spending a lot of time as a committee, and you'll see in our recommendations in a moment, looking at what would it look like to be hyper-localized? What would it look like to be hands-on? What would it look like to be less susceptible to substitutes? And so just in conclusion on this first part, these are some of the big questions that we've been wrestling with. And I can assure you, we have been wrestling with them because they're extremely difficult questions. Can we continue to offer the current breadth of programs and services? Where do we invest and where do we divest? If in fact that is what we need to do, which we haven't come to any of these conclusions in solid form yet. Ultimately, what will our future students, employers, and society need from us? And of course, that's the big question. And so let's kind of look at what we've done since September. Well, as I mentioned, it was well underway in the summer. And then right after the board meeting in September, we formalized, as Dr. Flamer mentioned, the EMT Guiding Coalition. I think it's really important to emphasize that this is a cross-district group of leaders. We have current and former academic senate presidents. We have current senate exec. We have current leadership of the CRFO. We have representatives from the CSEA, et cetera, et cetera. I don't even know how many decades of experience on this team. So I think it's very important to see that. And we will share with you today, and this is why I'm going to apologize reading some of this to you, because I think it's important for you to listen to it and think about it. Some new guiding principles that we've discussed as a group to help us create this new direction, and also some new potential opportunities for you to hear today. And next week, we will, and throughout the spring semester, begin constituent feedback on some of these new ideas through listening sessions and surveys. Additionally, I'm really happy to report that the fall semester included a bunch of interviews. And so we've been interviewing leaders in industry, nonprofits, government, and tribal communities, and we're learning a lot. And I can say, just as a side note, one of the things we're learning for sure is how much the community appreciates CR and our willingness to listen. So moving on to our current problem statement. So here's some language now drafted by the EMP. Remember the hypothesis that I mentioned earlier about increased competition? What we learned as a group is we're not actually experts in competing against external forces. That's not what we do. We're not trained to do that. That's not what we think about. That's not even what we get out of bed in the morning wanting to do. So what we have done is we've reframed that to students, which is what we get out of bed in the morning to do, to talk about, to improve, to give access to, you know, et cetera, et cetera. We love our students, right? So we reframe the question to focus on students will have more choices. So what does CR need to do to be the most relevant and valuable choice for our students? And then we even further define relevancy to, are we relevant to their goals? Will industry endorse our teaching as relevant to their needs? Will society endorse our offerings as relevant to the purpose and mission of our college? And then valuable, you know, what value do we offer that is superior to these other options through the student's lens? And how easily can this value be replaced in the minds of our students? And then choice, why ultimately will students choose? Not only CR once, but in this environment, students will have choice every semester. And that's a really interesting strategic challenge for the board to consider. We no longer have a monopoly not only on the student choice once, but the student choice continuously. And so the cycle to completion is not predetermined. And also in this environment, we are going to be competing against what we're referring to internally as a la carte options. So the California Virtual Campus with this hypothetical 113 Econ 1 offerings presents a la carte options where students can start not viewing their college education and community college through a campus, but through the system. So we have also spent a significant amount of time as a group drafting guiding principles to try to help us think through and provide scaffolding to how do we solve these problems? And so this is where I apologize for reading again, but I just really think it's important to read this language. We want the planning process to focus on strategies and goals that maintain CR's relevance. We've been spending a lot of time on that word, relevance, specifically relative to these emerging alternatives, but more specifically, and always reminding ourselves that we are in the service of our students, workforce, and community. And that challenges faculty and staff to adapt to the needs, changing needs of our students, workforce, and community with a focus on continuous dialogue, shared learning, and an openness to new ways of doing things. We think that's an incredibly important principle to be able to do what we're going to need to do here. that renews an emphasis on teaching excellence and academic support that better serves the needs of our students, that acknowledges that continuous professional development grounded in real-world practice is critically necessary to provide the best possible learning experience for our students, that values liberal arts education beyond just transfer pathways and communicates clearly its relevance and value to our students, local workforce, and community, that values learning opportunities across boundaries between traditional academic pathways and trade-based programs, that believes in interdisciplinary collaboration and synergy, yielding the best learning outcomes, and that ultimately our students will greatly benefit from hands-on experiential learning that is deeply rooted in Humboldt County's unique natural, cultural, and economic ecosystem. So we've spent a lot of time talking about each of these, and of course we could go into great detail about each one of these, but I'd be happy to answer any questions after about our thinking here, but I know I only have a few minutes here for the update. This is what we're really excited about, is we've been now putting some opportunities and themes on paper for us all to consider. And as I just mentioned in the last bullet point, one of the top opportunities we talked a lot about in response to some of the challenges that we have proposed is to prioritize learning opportunities that are deeply rooted in Humboldt County's unique natural, cultural, and economic ecosystem, and to expand the hands-on, experiential, and project-based learning that embraces interdisciplinary collaboration amongst faculty, students, and community partners, and strengthening partnerships with local industry, government, nonprofit, and tribal communities to support these activities, including internships, apprenticeships, and mentoring. Now, I want to make a comment that some of this stuff's going on now, right? So what we're talking about is not doing all sorts of new things necessarily. Some of these things may be new, but also this is just prioritizing activities. And let's go back to the student for a moment. The student now has a choice. Remember, that's our strategic question. It's about their choice. And so the choice is, okay, great. You can have the convenience of taking one of those Econ 1s through 113 community colleges, or you can study your econ through this aquaculture project on the Humboldt Bay, deeply rooted in government and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what's your choice? You have a choice now. We think that we have a superior choice in the second option to the first option. However, this will create a new reality for us because, of course, we can't move 80% to 100% of our offerings into this mode. We are going to have to offer scheduling and modalities, i.e. digital or hybrid, that meet students' lifestyle needs. One thing that we definitely know is that the work-life challenges that our students are facing, and COVID, of course, amplifying these majorly, is that the more that we can accommodate their work-life challenges, the more that we can keep them in our ecosystem and serve them appropriately. And that will have to include digital, hybrid, and scheduling options that are very, very flexible. We also think that it will force us to reimagine our physical spaces in light of these modality and scheduling changes, and also even activity changes, and to consider innovative uses and partnerships with our amazing physical spaces. And I'm not talking buildings, I'm talking campus when we're talking here physical spaces, consistent with our mission and values. And then this third bullet's really important because I've really made the case briefly for the hands-on project-based, beating out the 113 kind of commoditized options in a digital environment. However, I don't want to make that case too strongly because we will have students that need digital, as I've said, but also we as a group think that there is a certain percentage of our offerings and a certain percentage of our faculty that are ready to compete in that environment, where we can access new markets and new students that we can't access through geography, pre-digital disruption. And finally, in order to do these new things, we have to build organizational capacity that allows the college to consistently adapt, be resilient, and continually innovate. And that just takes time, but we have some proposals for how to do that. One would be to establish strategic working groups that are tasked on an annual basis to continually researching best practices across full-time face-to-face, hybrid, digital online, and any other new technologies that emerge, and reporting them back to the campus community as guidelines to how CR measures up against these best practices on a continual basis. Industry would call this an R&D function and a product development function. In response to that, we also are encouraging an investment in more faculty development based upon these recommendations to continually develop faculty in these areas with an emphasis on real world training. This is actually, for me as a faculty member, 15 years at CR, to me, this little point here is actually huge. That the working groups say, hey, in order for CR to be at best practice level, we got to be doing these things. And then we fund faculty to not just learn these things, but in real world settings appropriate to their discipline. Very important point that I think our group is trying to make. And then also offering internships, ideally paid, to interdisciplinary student teams who are also going through this process of evaluating CR's offering relative to their other choices and offering us recommendations for how do we better serve them and their experience because they're so critically important to us. And industry also does this through customers and bringing customers into their product development process and R&D process. So I know that's a lot to take in, and I hate reading out loud slides, so I'm sorry about that. But where do we go from here? So what have we done? We've gathered community feedback. We still have a handful of interviews to complete, but we're almost done with that process. We've launched the EMT process. I've shared with you our thinking to date. Next week, we start our first listening sessions. We have 2 listening sessions next week with the entire campus community. I believe it's Thursday and Friday of next week, and we'll have an announcement out on that shortly. And as I mentioned, we'll conclude the community interviews. So this spring, we are going to be doing a few pretty big things. The EMT will meet, continue to meet as a large group, but we're going to break it up into smaller working groups, which will continue to put pen to paper on this. And we will also have our workforce summit, where we're going to invite all of those that have been interviewed and some more to a summit to have this conversation about better serving our community and workforce needs. And of course, we will continue to have constituent review. So that's what I have for you today, but I would welcome any questions from the group.
Chris, if we can go back to your slide 15, which is talks about the draft guiding principles, page 2 as the title.
Page 2, yep.
So I think it's important to talk about why this language is so important to us moving forward. And that is, if I can just put a little header, then you can add some more information to it, is that there's a strong move as the trustees and the district knows that in the times of an economic crisis, the focus on community colleges becomes workforce development and career education. And we felt that it's very important that we not lose focus on how important the transfer education is. And that we did not want to set up a situation of a division between our humanities and transfer areas and career education. those of us that have been around for at least 12, 13, 14, 15 years remember what that feeling was on campus when there was a separation between the two houses, if you will. And we recognize how important it is that a student leaving CR, whether they're getting a welding degree or econ degree or a construction tech degree, clearly understands that humanities piece. So they're well-rounded citizens. And I think Chris pointed out during our meetings is that in his interviews with economic leaders, that they want students and employees that not just know the job, but know how to think and know how to get along with each other. So Chris, if you want to, if you want to, feel free to add a little bit more detail, especially to this guiding principles.
You articulated that really well. I don't know how much I can add to that,
Okay.
other than I can give you a specific example that I think Keith is referring to. Neil Ewald, the Chief Operating Officer of Green Diamond, is one of our interviews, and obviously forestry and natural resources is a critical component of our local economy and CR's forestry program. So we asked that question, you know, how would you look at liberal arts, you know, in the context of the workforce development needs of your organization or your industry? And he had an interesting take on it that I think is really important. He said, look, you can train skills that are very technical and specific, and those are important to being a good truck driver, to, you know, managing a chainsaw. You know, clearly there are technical skills that are critically important that you don't want to hurry past. However, if the student does not have a broad-based understanding of communicating effectively in teams, critical thinking, problem solving, etc., then they will be locked at the entry level. They will not be advanced in the organization. So he differentiated between skill-based training and what he called professional training. And he wants professional training, which is what Keith mentioned, which is a fundamental, you know, absolutely, you know, the fundamentals technically, but you also have a well-rounded liberal arts education to allow you to solve those other 21st century issues. So I think I just said exactly what Keith just said, but it's a real world example that came out of the interviews. I will say that is consistent. Critical thinking, problem solving, effective communication, and teamwork, you know, generally getting along with people, solving problems with people, are always at the top of the list in terms of what people want from our students. Are there any other, oh, Colleen, I see your hand up.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Gaines. I first want to thank you for this presentation, and note that your presentation in September and this presentation have been the finest presentations that I can recall hearing and seeing on the Educational Master Plan. I always learn so much when you present, so thank you for that. I have a question that I probably should know the answer to this, but I don't. So with the CVC, I'm assuming that a student would still matriculate at a local college, that you can't matriculate at the CVC. And if you are matriculating at a local college, will there be some kind of, I'll use the term residency requirement, so that the student would be obligated, in order to get a certificate or a degree from the local college, they'd be obligated to take X number of units from that local college. They can't do all of their coursework at the CVC. And then another question, and I'll put myself on mute. It would seem also that if a student has, let's just use your example, 113 options for Econ 1, that counseling and advising are going to be even critically more important. It's, I think, often a challenge for students to figure out their degree program when they're just dealing with a local college. So I'm wondering how counseling and advising will fit into this new world that we're entering. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mullery. I see that Angelina's here, and I see obviously Keith and others that have way more experience than me on some of the details here. Angelina, did you want to jump in on the home college side of it?
Please, I'd love to. So to speak first to the CVC, just to make the distinction, because folks, our internal faculty and staff keep getting confused about Calbright versus the CVC. So the CVC is just, you could think of a student taking a course there through a home college, exactly the same as them taking a course at CR, if CR is their home college. It works no different. It's highly complex in the way that the financial aid and enrollment and everything on the back end gets handled. But for the purposes of graduation, a home college acts exactly the same as if they're physically there on the site. Calbright, the fully online college, one of the stipulations for them getting accredited is that they are saying that they are granting only certificates, small unit certificates, but to acquire accreditation for ACCJC, they have to primarily grant associate's degrees. So I have no idea how that is going to unfold as they move forward with accreditation. And then I'm sorry, I lost track of the second part. Thank you.
It had to do with the importance of advising and counseling when there are so many options for students with CVC and other platforms.
Yes, so our counselors and advisors for years now, as soon as the CVC became available, our local counselors had no choice but to start reviewing it with students. Because the students were already hitting into it and knew that it was a way. And so our counselors right now, they only use it primarily as a way to find a course for a student who's getting close to completion or who is on a track that they absolutely want to stay on and for which they have no options locally at College of the Redwoods. So that's when they'll take them to the CVC if they haven't already gotten there themselves and start going over options. And then the role of counselor advisor and the role especially of DSPS has been highly controversial throughout the establishment of the CVC. And I think they've made a lot of progress and resolving issues of which college is responsible for what. But I think that took a lot of the time in determining how the CVC would operate.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
And just as an anecdote, Dr. Mullery and to the group, this person will remain unnamed because I don't want them to come across as not friendly to CR, but they have a son who was considering attending CR, and the advice that I was told he was given is, well, don't think of CR as a school anymore. You have the whole California to look at now as your school. And so, go out there and find the best class for you that fits your schedule, and, don't let CR constrain you. Now, is that a widespread belief system? I don't know. Is it a concern to our model? Sure. Absolutely. Are there any other questions or comments?
Trustee Matthews, I saw your hand raised there.
Oh,
I just wanted to comment. I'm sure it's not the only person who's, thinking of this, but in terms of partnerships, obviously the continuing work with Humboldt State University in terms of partnerships, in terms of programs, in terms of local programs and businesses and the local environment, and maybe in terms of this discussion about there being a polytechnic, which I assume would only enhance all of that. So I just want us to keep in mind that's not the only partnership, but certainly an important one, because they're going to be facing the same things. And we want our students to have that local strength and support going on to their four-year degree. And that's a wonderful opportunity for that.
Thank you, Trustee Matthews. And I do want to say something that's kind of cool on that note, and that is that our EMT was kind of coming in from, this angle that we've discussed now for a few months, and then HSU, independent, it was kind of coming in from a different angle on this polytechnic thing. Now, I know it's not 100% yet whether HSU will go that direction, but I do think it's true to say that our EMT committee is really excited about the potential of how what we're talking about really scaffolds beautifully with what they're talking about. And the other really important question, I think, strategically for both CR and HSU as partners in this transfer pathway and in the community, is when we educate our students, and let's say they want to leave, is this hyper-localized, hands-on experiential education globally relevant, right? Not just, great for somebody that wants to live in Humboldt County. And I mean, of course, we can all make our answer on that, but my answer would be absolutely. Can we create globally relevant local hands-on education that may be quite demanded if marketed and delivered appropriately?
I have a comment.
Trustee
Yes, sir.
Capini.
Yeah, just what you said at the at the end, if it's marketed appropriately, this is the story of every small business, everything. You got the Amazons, and now it's in education, this and that. It's certainly in my field. All the dairies in Humboldt County, Humboldt and Del Norte is one dairy down south. We have to compete against that. And you find your niche, but the biggest thing is marketing. Marketing, the Econ 101 or whatever, why are we the best? Why? I mean, some of it we have to a point embrace, and not be fearful of it. It's just, it's a great challenge, great report, a lot of thought and all of the above. But, back in 95, it worked both ways. We couldn't necessarily advertise and recruit out of the area. So, why do we have the best liberal arts program? Why do we have the best forestry program? Police academy or what have you, and a lot of it's in marketing. If we could, even band together with potential other small districts, for advertising power, whatever that would be. I don't know what that would look like, but just some comments. But great, just absolutely thoughtful and great presentation. And I appreciate all the work that has gone into it and continuing to go into it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I do completely agree with your comments about this as a marketing challenge. I think as a group, we have quite a bit of work to do to get to a place where the parents and the students of Humboldt County see this differentiated choice that we're now talking about, where they can look very clearly at a convenient, easy digital option, or they can look at a really rich, deeply rooted, localized experience where they get hands-on work, ideally internships, apprenticeships, project-based, that will bolster their resume versus the quick and easy, quote unquote, Amazon solution to higher education. But we're not there yet. I am concerned that if we don't, I share your concerns, I should say, that if we don't get there quickly, the easy, convenient option seems to be one heck of a solution for a lot of folks. Amazon's taking retail share very, very quickly on that value proposition. So yeah, we do need to move quickly.
Professor Gaines, I'd like to just commend you on this. It is fantastic. I love everything about this presentation. I love the direction it's going. I'm super stoked that there is a business guy kind of leading and organizing the effort. And so I really appreciate that. I think one of the first things I was kind of warned about as I was in this role of trustee is that education isn't like business. And I think that's true for sure. And we can't treat the education system like a business, but there are so many things about business that can be leveraged here. The comment you were making about, a niche being hyper local, hands-on, I mean, it just immediately started throwing red flags in my mind about potentially being more expensive with lower enrollment, right? And all those things. But if you're using tools like cash flow, and I don't even know how all this applies to the college because of education budgets being what they are, but customer acquisition costs, cash flow, P&Ls, those kinds of things. Like if our college was a little bit more nimble in some of those regards from a business perspective, I think we'll be better served in the future landscape you keep showing us. And the last thing I want to say is I really love the pivot that you guys made on the problem statement, taking it out of a competition kind of perspective to kind of a more holistic student success patchwork, really, because I think that no matter what the outcome of this educational master plan is, CR will be one part of a component of learning. And in fact, we already are, right? I mean, students are getting their education through YouTube. They're getting their education through Kindle books, through a mentorship with the neighbor down the road. I mean, it really is all over the place already. And acknowledging that and building it into our analysis of the future and finding our niche there in that perspective is just spot on. So thank you very much. I'm so glad you're doing this. President Flamer, thank you for making this all happen and getting these folks together.
Well, thank you to everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I look forward to coming back in a few months whenever it's appropriate and having some more, showing more progress along these paths. So,
Yeah,
thank
you're
you.
welcome. Thank you. All right. If there's no further questions or comments, let's move on to 4.2, presentation from Mr. Thomas Gutierrez.
Yes, hello. Let me share my screen with you and we can get started. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, is it full-sized? You can everybody see?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so to get us started, my name is Tom Gutierrez. I represent Servitas here today, and we were selected as the private entity for a public-private partnership for student housing, which I think everybody's aware of. And we've been working for the last few months with the college team on getting the details put together to move forward on a student housing development. So just a quick agenda here, major topics. Definitely have a slide for questions at the end, but if there's any questions, I'll take them at any time. You can interrupt, please feel free. So introductions, myself, Tom Gutierrez, Director of Project Development. Angel Rivera, I believe, will be joining us shortly. He had another meeting that was in conflict, but we can both answer all the questions necessary. So to move forward here to start, I'd like to go back a little bit into where we started with this conceptual design, which was our initial concept of what to do with the next phase of housing on the campus here for College of the Redwoods. So the idea behind this initial concept was to find a way to create the most cost-effective way to provide the goal here of, at the time, 300 residents.
Black merit as a matter of law.
So one of the trade-offs with trying to go with a cost-effective solution is it had a larger land use than we wanted to use here for this development. As you can see, it expanded over a large swath of land. So we decided to realign some of the priorities for the development here, and we came up with 2 alternate options that we could pursue. So alternate 1 option, we lost a few of the beds total here as we shrunk our footprint down a little bit. And but the major item that this allowed us to do is we broke the development into 2 phases of construction so that we could put the first phase and build it, break ground, build it, and have it operational prior to the demolition of the existing housing. One of the priorities that we've discussed is that maintaining the housing on campus for the student body is a very high priority. So this was the first option. In order to do that, we have maintained it in this smaller area here as part of the development, because that was at the time the area that was allowable to build for residential facilities per the seismic analysis that had been completed. Option 2 that we looked at extended, and phase 1 was outside of what was currently the buildable area for the seismic status of your campus. So the demolition of the existing facilities would still follow the construction of phase 1, but another priority that was added here was that we were able to extend the total number of residences up to approximately 320, versus in option 1, it was less than 300. So we looked at it to say, hey, the difference between the options is either more beds or having to extend our buildable area for option 2. So we talked with the college committee, and the selection was made to pursue option 2. So we've done some research on that buildable area there, and unfortunately, some of the area where this building would end up being constructed is not seismically able to house a residence on it. So we have moved back into pursuing option 1 for the concept as we move into the design phase with an architect. So as far as the concept units that we intend to move forward with at this moment, on the left, you can see the existing facilities that you have, as well as on the right, is what Servitas has built and operates across the United States right now, and has very, very high customer satisfaction. Everybody appears to enjoy this type of facility for a more traditional type dorm facility across the United States. So these are the proposed unit types that we went out to the market, which is your students, to try and define the market interest for this new housing, to ensure that we have the market demand that would allow us to continue to move forward with this development. But we'll get to that in a minute. So the schedule that we're at right now, excuse me. In front of you is the schedule that we have for the phase 1, which I'm focusing on phase 1 here because the phase 2 overlaps a lot of the phase 1 timelines. So getting that first building out of the ground and occupied will replace the existing housing on campus. So anything after that will be is intended to be a net positive. So we're looking right now at being able to have a delivery, excuse me, in early 2024 for the actual facility for move-in. But right now we are obviously early 21. We are completing our due diligence works with geotechnical and surveying, et cetera. And we have the final contract negotiations with the architecture firm in process at the moment. So we are right on track here with this schedule for delivery. As I talked a little while ago about the market study findings, the market study did happen during our pandemic. So there was a enrollment decrease between the fall 19 student body and the fall of 2020. So when the market study and demand studies are analyzed for total demand, it looks mostly at the total market size in order to generate the total beds that the student body would demand here. So what we asked our consultant to do is to run the analysis with the same metrics with a fall of 19 enrollment for the college, as well as the current fall of 2020 enrollment. So as you can see on the screen here, between the two, there's a fairly significant disparity of over 60 beds between the two enrollments, and we expect enrollment to increase again past the fall 2019 rates. But the one of the good outcomes of having split the development into two phases is that neither option that we pursued had more than the current demand projections here, the 226 to 250 beds from this study in the first phase of operations. So what this allows us to do is move forward in like I said, the phased approach, but this is the very a more deliberate approach than moving in with a single giant phase. The more deliberate approach allows for us to make sure that as we build the beds as they are necessary for your student body. So all things put together here, it's a very positive market study that came back for us, and we think that as we move forward into the future here, that this is only just going to get better and better. So as far as financing, because that's always a major topic of how we're going to fund things, the college put out an RFP to find a financing partner and selected Raymond James. And right now, collectively, we are pursuing financing that is the most cost-effective capital in the market available, which is backed by the United States Department of Agriculture. They have a rural development program, which College of the Redwoods qualifies for. And they will finance 100% of the development cost, which is very, very important. So that there does not need to be any cash coming from the college directly to finance this development. And the revenues generated by the project will then go to pay back the loan to the USDA. And right now, the current rates for their lending is set at 2.125% annually. They do a quarterly update for that, but it's always the lowest cost of capital in the market. So right now we are in the middle of the pre-application process, and we are submitting all the various items that government entities always need to give money, which I think everybody is quite familiar with. And as we move forward, there's a few budget and design questions that are part of the pre-application submittal that need to get answered that we're working on at this moment. So that's where we are in the pre-application. And once the budget and design items come together, then we can actually submit that application and have the the USDA representatives as part of our development team going into the future. So we're looking forward to that here shortly. There are other financing options available if we find that they can produce a better value for the college or this for the project. But that's far off into the future. So if we need to, we can talk about those later. The project budget, right now we're still in the, obviously the conceptual design phases here. So we have some limited information to give to a project estimator. So we are looking at getting bids submitted for a construction estimator that will carry our project and estimate our project at all the various project design phases here through the bid phase with our selected general contractor whenever that happens, whenever that starts to begin. So that's all that I had to present this afternoon here for those in California. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Trustee Cabini.
On the USDA financing, when we lock in, say, whenever it'll be locked in between now and 2024, I mean, when it's done, could we lock in early, in other words?
Yes. So prior to financial closing of the job, when we would get funding to actually build the facility, we would get a commitment letter from the USDA, and that has a lock on our interest rate. And if the interest rate moves higher than that, then you use the lower interest rate that it was locked at. But if it does move lower, the USDA will allow you to get the financing at that lower rate.
Okay, then just another question.
Okay.
When we move on with construction, is a lot of local contractors going to be involved? Are you going to subcontract out to the locals?
So the USDA prefers, and we plan to pursue the design bid build process, so this will be an entirely open bid process to anyone that would like to bid for that general contractor work. So that selection process will define who the labor market is, but I expect that it will be, in the vast majority, the local bidders coming through for this.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes on projects like that, the bid requirements kind of preclude local developers from being able to engage in that process. I'd love to hear more about that as the project progresses. Dr. Flamer.
Absolutely. I'll put a note here and get you some more details for it. I don't want to speak for the USDA, but I will, in my discussions with them previously, the entire program for the rural development program is to build up the rural areas of America. And if they didn't have a preference for building the rural areas, they wouldn't have the program. So I think that it's highly likely that they would have a focus on keeping local labor as well. But I can't speak for them. But I do not expect them to interfere with the college's bid program.
Sure. Trustee Dorn, I saw that your hand was raised. And then
I had a couple of questions. One was the occupancy rate, and what is the dynamics of the football team? And because before, I believe the football team heavily filled the dorms, and that could be why 20 years are off. So if we don't have, did they consider whether we have a football team or don't when they projected the occupancy rate?
I need to go back and review the data for our market projections. I think athletes were obviously asked, but I do not think that we defined a specific team or sport to say that we're relying heavily on their occupancy. It went to the general population, and this is the numbers that came back from that market demands.
But I think it'd be important to know athletes or the football team, because it sounds like we're not sure where we're headed with that. And did they consider the foreign students? I know President Flamer is working on recruiting foreign students.
For this survey, the actual survey, the digital survey went to all existing student accounts. So I need to go back and look at the percentage of the respondents that were foreign born or out of state. But there was participation from those groups.
Because the part-time students, are you thinking one semester you have a part-time student and then the next semester there's a different part-time student, or how does that work?
It's at the selection of the operator. There, in general, Servitas's managed facilities offer an annual program in those areas that it is desired, but generally, by semester renting is the standard for the more traditional facilities that mirror what this is.
Aaron M.
And I think the discussions that we've had right now is that this new facility will mirror what the existing facilities are being operated as, which is a semester-based descent.
Okay, and then I want to throw this out to my fellow trustees. We just heard, the educational master plan, and we're sort of like not completely sure where we're headed and where learning is. So I do have some concern. I mean, what is the take of the educational master plan committee on building a student housing? This is sort of gets back in my mind to where CR going to be in 5 years. I'm concerned that we're going to build something and maybe they're not going to come. Maybe dorms are going to be a thing of the past. I don't know. I think that's something we may need to look at and to evaluate.
Thank you, Trustee Dorn. Trustee Matthews, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. So I had kind of an opposite reaction on the numbers. So a market study obviously is the basis for looking at the numbers, but when we talk about the education master plan and what Professor Gaines was presenting, all of that information, to me, as we build to strengthen locally oriented, locally valued, and opportunity-based programs that students would, not only local students, but other students would come for, to me, that strengthens the need for a residential opportunity. And so I want us to not be irresponsibly optimistic, but to look towards those changes too, in terms of having a residential opportunity.
Thank you, Trustee Matthews. Any other questions or comments from board members?
I do want to just say, as probably the only dormie that lived in those dorms on the board, when I lived in the dorms, they were really predominantly from Mendocino County, Del Norte County, Trinity County. And the dorms had a waiting list at that time. To get into it wasn't easy. But we really didn't have very few sports people. So back to Trustee Matthews, I think you do make a very good point. But I'm just concerned that perhaps dorms are could be a thing of the past. I don't know. What, President Flamer, what's HSU doing with their dorm construction? I know they had a lot of big projects coming up.
Well, I could just tell you that from a background standpoint, Servitas came on my radar from my discussions with Dr. Jackson on a joint project for dorms in the city of Eureka. because we saw the value of collaboration on dorms. But my point at that time was our dorms are from the 60s, and we don't have enough money to renovate the dorms up to a standard that a student, quite frankly, expects and should have from a student success standpoint.
Oh, I agree completely. And the new floor, having lived in those dorms, the new
Right.
floor plan is much better.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do want to make a comment, Trustee Dorn, on the issue that of dorms becoming a thing of the past. I really don't think that's the case, and that is an example that we can point to of our sister institutions that did not have dorms in the past are using Servitas and other ones to build dorms because they see that as a revenue generator. That's what Santa Rosa has just built, a state-of-the-art dorm that rivals anything that I've ever seen. And so they can now draw, as Trustee Matthews said, draw on other areas, not just across California, but across the nation about that they have education opportunities, and they have a great student success oriented dorm. And quite frankly, we don't have that yet, and that's what we need to build.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like the Redwoods Room and Board Scholarship Program, having the ability to have these rooms gives us much more flexibility to address the student success needs to get these folks through the pipeline efficiently, and it gives us much more flexibility to support our funding by helping make students successful. So I'm all in favor of the exploration of this, and I appreciate the work that's been done into it so far. I had some questions. So you mentioned that the demo of the original existing structures would happen after phase one, the phase one building is done. But I'm curious, Dr. Flamer, are you planning on keeping the existing dormitories open? In other words, is the demolition of those buildings after phase one also synonymous with those existing dormitories being open until the moment that phase two will allow students to occupy?
Yes, so we'll have an overlap there.
Thank you.
So we don't lose revenue.
And then I was curious on your coming up with the numbers of units to build and your market analysis. Did you also include like surrounding housing market analysis? Because for sure, one of the things we've heard from students is how difficult it is for students, especially BIPOC students, to be able to get local housing in the rental market.
Yes, we did. It was a separate survey, and we received it, I want to say yesterday, the final draft of that local market, I believe is what they called it, the local market availability survey that allows us some information into the local market and what is available in competition. So we have not, it didn't make it into this slide deck, but there is a comparable analysis for the local market to ensure that that there wasn't a mistake or a duplication of data.
I'd be really interested in seeing how those numbers correlate with the 300 to 320 that you're talking about here when you've had time to analyze that.
Okay.
And then the other thing, Dr. Flamer, I wonder if we should be considering faculty housing as well. You know, we have such a high number of adjunct faculty, and a lot of these folks are traveling between campuses. And I wonder if this project is a good scope for it, or if it's beyond the scope of this.
No, actually, it's a perfect scope. When we first talked about new dorms, we talked explicitly about having rooms that we can rent out to staff and or faculty just as a temporary basis, but also quite going back to what Trustee Dorn mentioned, is that we figured that we would need more beds because of our interest to push in international student recruitment. So yes, to both questions, yes.
Well, this is excellent. Thank you so much for your presentation and all the thought that's going into it and continues forward. I feel lucky that we have you on our team.
Thank you for your time. Glad to be here.
All right. Well, if there are no further comments here, let's move on to the next agenda item. Item 4.3, the Citizens Bond Oversight Report. Let's see, Dr. Flamer, do you have anything to contribute here?
No, it's just an informational item.
Okay. Does anybody want to discuss this? I thought it was a very interesting report myself. I don't know, you know, very early on into the report, the thing that struck me was, and I quote, "The sale resulted in 2.9 million in total gross savings from the old debt service payment schedule. In a typical year, the savings is 180,000, or about 7% less. So that's just amazing to me that the savings to Humboldt, Del Norte, Mendocino property taxpayers is approximately 2.2 million. Pretty incredible.
Yeah, it started out, I believe, assessing $18 per thousand, and it went down to $8. Not just totally with that, but with other variables too. But that's being a good steward of taxpayers' money.
Absolutely.
And I think we need to give credit to Trustee Emod for that, because he really pushed that through. We should all the taxpayers of the counties should be grateful for that.
Perfect. All right.
But I did have a question. So there's 750,000 left, and how many times have we spent that over?
I'm not sure your question, how many times have we spent that?
Well, I mean, we keep saying, well, bond money. That was a sarcastic comment, but is that money all allocated?
Right now, we do have buckets where that money is put in the budget, yes. But now, but as you know, that we rebalance as often as we need to.
When do you expect it to be closed out?
I would like to have it closed out by the end of this calendar year, actually.
Calendar, okay.
Trustee Matthews?
I would just like to publicly acknowledge the fact that while I am not one bit surprised that the annual report documents reiterates the fact that the college has spent the bond money the way the college is supposed to, and that's like I said, no surprise, but knowing the college, but it's an important point, and it's the whole reason for having the committee. And so I just want to publicly acknowledge that that was the finding.
Very good. Any other questions or comments on this item? All right, let's move into our organizational reports. Let's see, Academic Senate, Mr. Sakalo.
I don't have any report at this time, Trustee Kelly.
All right, thank you, sir. Moving on to 5.2, CRFO, Professor Haggerty. All right. I don't know if she is here or muted. I don't see her in the list. How about classified, President Ingman?
Good afternoon. I do not have anything to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, 5.4, Management Council. All right. Well, Student Trustee Peters is going to save us here with 5.5.
Thank you. I don't have anything to report either.
Okay. Well, good. You're rounding us out. It's complete. All right. Let's see, 6.3, Dr. Flamer.
Thank you. Two very quick notes that I want to have some verbal comments. First thing is I signed an MOU with the county today that allows the county to use our Eureka campus gym as a vaccination clinic site from today, which is the January 5th, through July 31st, 2021. So I'm working with the county often to figure out what that schedule looks like and the tiers that they're going to use to vaccinate our community. So this is a wonderful opportunity for CR to give back to our community. But also I wanted to talk about that the supervisors have approved a hemp exemption for us to do research. We don't have a specific project in mind yet, but Commissioner Dolph, but also Supervisor Bone worked with Dean Carey Mayer and I to put this exemption together in the off chance that down the road, we will be able to do more research on hemp. So we have something in place that allows more flexibility if during our education master plan process, something does develop that allows us to do more research, but also to grow it from a research point of view. And those are my comments.
Thank you. Dr. Flamer, who will be administering the vaccinations at our facility if it goes forward? Or is it the county, or is it a?
Right. The only thing I know is that the county's doing that.
Okay.
So that was my question as well. Is that going to be St. Joe's vaccinations, or will that be the county public health department's vaccinations?
And I don't have the answer to that.
Okay, and I guess I misread your update because I thought you mentioned that they were going to use it start Monday with tier 1.
Right. That's what I was first told, and now they're saying it probably won't start until tomorrow. As my contact of county says, and then CR knows this perfectly well, is that they're building the plane and flying it at the same time.
Right. No, I understand. I mean, I was just curious because I know that a lot of the county's public health nurses are waiting to be vaccinated and they have no idea when they're going to be.
Yeah, so we'll be the site for that happening, yes.
Perfect. Good job.
Keith, I also had a question in your report. Well, actually, it's not a question as much as it is. I'd like to make mention to the advocacy committee members of the board here. I thought that the recommendations from the CR Police Academy Advisory Committee were excellent. And I view our police academy as having the capability right now of leading throughout the state on maybe some important reforms that can be accommodated outside of the typical post oversight there. And I guess I would ask the advisory committee to maybe consider looking at those recommendations and thinking about if there's a point on there of advocacy that we could encourage Dr. Flamer and his staff to maybe advocate for on behalf with the state for potential changes that make sense. But anyway, I thought it was excellent, and thank you so much for pulling that together on behalf of the Police Academy.
Welcome.
Okay, let's see. 6.2, Dr. Hill.
Thank you. I just wanted to add 2 things to my report in addition. The first is that at one of the last meetings of the instructional council, so that's deans and directors, everyone who works in instruction management, we started the discussion about what happens if HSU does get approved and become a polytechnic university. And some of the deans and I have quite a bit of familiarity with Cal Poly SLO and with the Cal Polys. And so, you know, we started research about what those colleges look like, anticipating what the majors would be at HSU. And then it led to a lengthy speculation about the ADTs and what would the ADTs at HSU with us and HSU remain the same? Would they need to change? How would they change? So there's a lot there, and well, I can't tell you anything with any certainty right now. I just wanted to let the board know that the administration is already thinking about this in detail, and the implications for our students and what this would mean as a transfer, a new type of transfer pathway to our largest feeder institution. And so it kind of took us all off guard, I think, everybody, but we're just hanging in there and trying to make the best of what we hope would be a really great situation. The other thing, just quickly, the professional development Flex Week calendar agenda will be coming out this week. We already have our DE folks, Reno Giovanetti and Wendy Briggs, are already offering sessions starting this week. So not only have we taken Flex and made it 2 days into now a full week's long agenda, but the DE folks are extending it to this week as well. So please look for that. It's, a lot of it is specific to faculty, but there will likely be some things that you might find interesting if you have the time to participate in. There's a diverse variety of presentations. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that agenda will be coming out. The primary days for that are next Thursday and Friday of next week. Thank you. And if you have any questions.
And Angelina, we have two new trustees go and use an acronym that they may not understand. So would you please take 10 seconds and talk about what an ADT is?
Should I time? Okay, 10 seconds, here we go. So the flexible calendar is, we used to have 18-week semesters, and us, along with most of the colleges in the system, shortened that to 16, I believe we're 16.4. And so we make up for that, for the faculty do, by engaging their time in professional development opportunities instead of instruction. And so those opportunities have to be in support of their professional obligations and improving their teaching and the student experience. So it's specific to instruction. We try to also include in this flexible calendar some professional development opportunities for non-faculty as well, but typically they're quite busy at that period of the year, so we keep that minimal. But that's FLEX, stands for flexible calendar.
Dr. Hill, do you foresee partnership with the Heisenrater group as potentially helpful solution to increase our nursing pipeline? I know that I've heard often that clinicals is a big sticky point, and I know there's very little we can do sometimes because we're governed by the state nursing board and others, but I guess, can you speak to this partnership as possibly alleviating any of that pinch?
Yeah, I can speak to it insofar as, and I can tell you that Heisenrater, that when I spoke with Corey, the first thing he said, kind of candidly, is that they're looking for nursing content. And so I spoke with Roberta, and it really is the way that we're approaching this from a content basis means it needs to be faculty led, but Roberta, with her faculty hat on from the past, saw kind of some no-brainer opportunities in with lecture, with clinical lab things that happen in the classroom, where they could be reused from one faculty to another. So it could ease the transition for new associate faculty getting into the pipeline. So that was one immediate kind of thing she saw that could be a benefit. Now with clinicals, that would mean filming in the hospitals. And I don't know what kind of agreement that would need, but if we could get such an agreement, I know that Heisenrater's company has obviously filmed in the Cleveland Clinic and, in different healthcare institutions. So, I mean, I don't see why we couldn't try to make that happen, which would be fantastic. It just, honestly, it takes the time of the faculty who are very busy teaching, to be able to do it. So if we could get a grant and try to like prioritize maybe over a summer, the engagement of faculty to help in these endeavors and compensate them for it, I think that could be very doable. I'm just not sure how to pull it off without a grant or some outside resources, but we will be pursuing that. And President Flamer has been very supportive of me in trying to get some more grant writing capabilities going.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, shall we move forward to item 6.3?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'd just like to add that for the advisory committee, because of the folks, the members of the committee, I think the committee is in a unique position to really take a big overlooking view of the planning at the college and identify certain issues and challenges that the college is facing. Some not always within the scope of the committee, but we've definitely been having some very interesting conversations. And I think that the committee's work is also important to keep accreditation in the forefront, especially as it has to do with budgeting. So that's really all that I had to add, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I think it's testimony of the great work you're doing. No questions here. Thank you. All right. How about 6.4?
Yes, thanks, President Kelly. I'd like to add a little background on the college's selection to host the COAD coordinator independent contractor position. So if you remember, the CR Foundation was set to host the Redwoods Disaster Summit back on April 24th of 2020. We actually had a couple hundred individuals sign up for the event in just a few weeks before we had to cancel due to COVID. We were hosting this community conversation due to the challenges that arose out of the power outages we all experienced in 2019 and how various groups in the community identified the challenges our county faced with overall communications between all the departments, agencies, institutions, organizations that are involved in disaster response. Over the last 9 months, this conversation has continued through the North Coast Grant-Making Partnership. This partnership is comprised of First 5 Humboldt, the Footprint Foundation, the Humboldt Area Foundation, Humboldt Health Foundation, the Vesper Society, the McLean Foundation, the Patricia D. and William B. Smolin Foundation, the College of the Redwoods Foundation, and St. Joseph Health, Humboldt County. And because of these conversations, funds were subsequently raised to hire an independent contractor to research and launch a Humboldt COAD, Community Organizations Active in Disaster, with the support of the county's Office of Emergency Services. The CR Foundation appreciates the recognition in being selected as the hosting organization for the COAD coordinator. Being engaged in this initiative is a strong fit for the college, given our role in developing and training first responders and the Foundation's commitment to engage in partnerships and collaborations that benefit our community. And if there were any questions.
Well, I was really excited to see our institution serving as the host agency for this COAD. What an important role for us to play. And I can't think of a better, more neutral entity than CR to play it. So kudos for that. And I just wanted to say, Marty, on a personal note, I'm sad to be replacing myself on the foundation board, but I just imagine that trustees Copini and Robertson would do a great job serving in the year ahead. And I think very highly of President Monica Sperling and the work that you're doing there, doing a great job of getting our foundation back in shape as a power philanthropic arm in our community for the college. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Actually, if I may jump in here, Marty, I'm sure you saw that I'll also not be serving on the foundation board. And I just wanted to let you know that I really have enjoyed serving on the board. And I think you've just done an outstanding job in your leadership role on the board. So thank you for all you're doing. And I'll look forward to reports from my trustee colleagues on how we're progressing in the future.
Thanks, Trustee Mullery.
All right. Let's see, 7.1, approve a trustee request to place an item on a future agenda. Do my colleagues have any comments or questions here? Very good. Moving on to item 8.1 with disclosure of items to be discussed in closed session. And I apologize, but I have lost my notes on how to disclose this. As a new person kind of facilitating this call. Is there language I'm supposed to use for this?
Yeah, just read it off the agenda, 10.1.
Okay, great. So we'll be having a conference with legal counsel on existing litigation. Any comments before we move into closed session? All right. Let's see, can we take a 5-minute break? All right, at 3:33, coming back from closed session, the board has nothing to report out. I don't know, do we need motions to adjourn? Or do we just call it?
I
How
so
does this work?
move. I so move.
I second.
I second it.
Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.
Okay.
Bye.
Hey, guys, see you later.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.